Today I'll be showing you how to use the Sony a7 III to expose properly for light and how to edit your pictures after in Adobe Lightroom Classic. Basically, what we use to expose properly in the photography world is called the exposure triangle. It's composed of three different things: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Starting with shutter speed, it basically controls how fast your camera is going to take pictures or how fast the shutter is going to open and close. The faster your shutter speed, so let's say your shutter speed is 1/4000, that's pretty quick. It's going to open and close very rapidly. It's going to let in only a little bit of light because of how quickly it's moving, and your subjects are going to be very sharp and in focus. If you go down to say 1/60, you're going to have a lot of motion blur from your subjects. I usually try to stay between 250 to 500 for most photography situations. Next is your aperture. That also controls how much light goes into the camera, but it also controls the depth of field that you're gonna get. So an aperture of f2.8, which you can see at the bottom of the camera, that basically is going to say that the background is going to be very creamy, blurry, portrait photography. It also means that you're letting more light in because your aperture is so wide. 2.8 is the widest it can go. Whereas if you start going smaller, the background is going to get less and less blurry and the picture is going to get darker because you're letting less light in. So you want to balance that with your shutter speed, of course, but it's important to recognize that your aperture can have a big effect. And if you're shooting a lot of people and there are layers and you need more of your background in focus, you're gonna wanna increase your aperture so that way you can get more people in focus in your background. The last part of the exposure triangle is your ISO. Your ISO is kind of the digitally created version of lighting, I guess you could say. It manually will increase the exposure of your photos. So if you're shooting and it's twilight and the sun is gone and you need a little bit more, you go ahead, you increase your ISO. If you're shooting in the middle of the day, you're going to decrease that to 100. Even if the sun is starting to set, I would usually keep my ISO as low as possible because once you start bumping that up, you're going to create a lot of digital noise in your photo, which can be sometimes hard to get rid of and messes with the clarity of what you're shooting. So ISO for me usually stays pretty stable unless it's late at night and I'm using my flash, and then I'll increase it. Otherwise, you usually leave that right around 100 to 200. I would never go over 500 unless you have a really good reason. I'm going to use the pictures that I took a couple of days ago as an example of how to edit and upload them. So first things first, you're going to go ahead and hook up your camera to your computer. Because I have a Mac, not every adapter is going to work, so I had to buy an adapter to use so I can hook it up. You can also do this by just taking out the memory card and putting it straight into your MacBook Pro. But if your computer doesn't have a capability to do that, you can also just hook it up manually like I did here. I use Adobe Lightroom Classic to edit, so once you have your camera hooked up to your laptop and turned on, you'll just go ahead and open that app. Once you have your camera hooked up, you can go ahead and import your photos. It will just automatically link to the camera that you have to your computer. You can check individual boxes to check them. There's an option to uncheck all boxes and then just check the ones you want, or check all of them and uncheck the ones you don't want. It's pretty simple. Once you're done, you just go ahead and you press import. Once your photos are uploaded, you can go to the library tab and toggle between the different folders that you have. Mine are just labeled by date. So I have a wedding, you scroll down, you can see some of those pictures. Family session, scroll, see some of those. And then the session that I will be showing you how to edit from, just an engagement session that I did the other day. If you want to have more editing capabilities, you need to go to the Develop tab. On the right side of the screen is where you're going to be able to control all the aspects of your photo. And then at the bottom, you can see just a strip of all the different photos that you took throughout the session. You have all of your photos, you just go ahead and select one. This is the one I'm going to do. You'll notice I do a lot of zooming in and zooming out as I'm editing this. That's because I like to make sure that the skin tones are consistent. First, on the left side, you have all of these presets. Basically, it's just a prescribed way that it will edit it. I've bought them from another photographer. So I go through all of those, pick one, trying to decide. Usually I end up editing with Reverie and Oak 2.4 because I just like the skin tones that I get and the coloring of the rest of the pictures. Next, what I'll do is I can manually change some of the settings. So I increased the temperature, made it a little bit warmer, increased the exposure, made it a little bit brighter. You can see as I do things to the highlights and to the whites, it changes a little bit the background. Shadows makes a big difference. Blacks also makes a big difference. So I just went ahead to show you the kind of control that you have over your picture, but I didn't make many adjustments there. Vibrance too, just with how bright the colors are gonna be. Yeah, and then you can also isolate the individual colors in the photo, which I think is kind of cool. 3 different aspects of color: hue, saturation, and luminescence. You'll see here I'm zooming in. I'm going to show you a couple of different functions. One is the crop, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really feel like cropping this picture. I think it looks nice the way it is though. Next you can see I'm going to go ahead and try and cover up some blemishes, so we have a sun flare on the guy's face. Nothing too crazy. And then the girl, she texted me after and said, would you mind editing out the scab on my cheek? And I said, that's not a big deal. I just used the heel brush. It's AI. It fills in what it thinks should be there. It's content aware. And since they're so small, it's pretty easy. Next, you can isolate certain parts of the photo. So I selected sky here so you could see, and it'll just go ahead and highlight the sky, and you can change the way the sky looks. Personally, I think the sky looks fine, so I'm not gonna make any changes. I just wanted to show you that you do have that option. When you're done with the photo, you can go ahead, go up to File and Export. I'm gonna put it in a new folder, Logan and Kylie, because that's the name of the couple that I photographed. And go ahead and export that. And then it's just gonna be right in your file folder that you can use to airdrop. That's usually what I do. I'll find it in the folder, click on it, you can see it's nice and big, and then if I wanna share it to my phone to post it on my Instagram or something like that for my account, I'll just airdrop it. Thanks so much for tuning in.